Yay. Okay. It is charging now. That's pretty much good. Okay, how's the stream? Perfect. Oh, shoot. Back down my chair almost. Uh, what is it? Not trip over, but I almost made my background foam just collapse onto myself. Or I'll even go back. Besides the point, this is gonna be something new, not related to parkour or free running this time. Still gonna go back to it because I'm learning a lot. Um, but with special occasions like Halloween and Day of the Dead, we're just gonna talk about U.S. election. I figure just because it only happens every 4 years, so I wouldn't have an opportunity to do that. It's probably gonna be a long time. But let's just take this time to actually just do something. Something I always try to wonder, and hell, even once I finish reading, at least get some grasp of it, is the United States Electoral College, highlighted down right here in blue. So I'm gonna try to understand, read it out, try to understand it, and hopefully, if then I don't understand it, at least some person, even me in the future, can at least grasp it later on. But then again, there's experts who still have a hard time trying to understand every nitpick of its existence because the United States Electoral College was created around, and this is just some background I know, was created around when the founding fathers were still around, and government was being established right after the Revolutionary War and the next few decades. So, um, it has old historical meaning, but I figured since the U.S. is a constitutional republic with several democratic reforms, um, I figured it's going to be difficult, but let's just try it. United States Electoral College. In the United States, the Electoral College refers to the group of presidential electors required by the United States Constitution to form every 4 years for the sole purpose of electing the President and Vice President of the United States. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution provides that each state shall appoint electors selected in a manner its legislature determines, and it disqualifies any person holding a federal office, either elected or appointed, by being an elector. Excuse me. This is my professional burp going out to the masses. But, I am human. Everybody else is human. I believe politicians are still get a good grasp of humor, especially when it came to understanding about the people on the interwebs. So yeah, burping is one of our call signs. So where did I left off? Let's just go where I left here. Selected in a manner its legislature determines, and it disqualifies any person holding a federal office, either elected or appointed, from being an elector. There are currently 538 electors and an absolute majority of electoral votes. 270 or more is required to win an election. The appropriateness of the electoral college system is a matter of ongoing debate. Supporters argue that it is a fundamental component of American federalism. They maintain the system elected the winner of the nationwide popular vote in over 90% of presidential elections, promotes political stability, preserves the constitutional role of the states in presidential elections, and fosters a broad-based, enduring, and generally moderate political party system. Alrighty, let me double check I'm gonna step away from my desk for the meantime just to check my door is locked because my cat had to require me to open up so she could actually punch on my leg. She's she's a handful. I love her, but man, I gotta focus. Wait, do this again. My water flask is really hard, but my desk is harder, so I could just smack it. Nothing happens. Nothing breaks. I can't do that if I just punched it in my monitor. I won't get to see uh, what I'm reading. Some of it, but it won't be that important or that factual or reliable. Will be entertaining though, and a challenge for me. Alrighty. So, yeah, they maintain the system elected to the winner of the nationwide popular vote in over 90% of presidential elections. I figured I want to go back over that because it highlights over a popular vote. Everybody likes to talk about Electoral College or the electoral vote versus the popular vote. But, let me finish on this. The contents here is pretty stiff. There's pretty much a lot of content compared to the other Wikipedias I've been reading. But you have number one, number of electors, procedure, background, history, modern mechanics, chronological table, alternative methods of choosing electors, contemporary issues, political opinion, efforts to abolish or reform. And then 11 through 14, see also references for the reading, external links. So yeah, going to even the bullets between history, modern mechanics, there's a pretty good amount. Efforts to abolish or reform. Well, we could go through that once we get there. Let's look at let me look at my screen. Okay. Let's just open this up to actually see the electoral map so we can just get some imagery. I could get an idea of what I'm looking at. So this is the amount of electoral votes a place can get. So yeah. DC 3. So yeah, DC the star because DC is a very small place. You also have 5 where you have the 1, 2, 3, which we'll explain later. They actually have kept everything here. And yeah, with DC, it does get a vote. So yeah, it shows importance. Electoral votes is allocated to each state and to the District of Columbia for the 2012, 2016, and 2020 presidential elections based on the population from the 2010 census. So we'll see how that goes with this image change to the 2020 census. And then you have this regular rainbow of votes that people see. I always imagine that I'm gonna look at the rainbow chart or telling somebody, hey, look at this rainbow chart. That's what it is. This is what that is. It's an easy way to explain to someone. Always wondering how this chart works and how is it represented. Let me go over this quickly. Composite electoral change vote tally for the 2016 presidential election. The number of votes cast was 538 right here. Actually, let me enlarge it. It has several other contexts that's under this image history along with description when it shows. So this will be our legend. So yeah, Sanders, Casey, Paul, Spotted Eagle, all down here, along with Trump and Clinton last election. Alrighty. So it will have these contents here. There's that person, these persons. So a bunch of old people. Definitely old. Looks pretty young. But that could just be the glasses. It does not make a person older. It makes you look like a child. Or is that what my mother keeps on telling me? Apparently, uh, people think people wear glasses because they're smart. Even wearing sunglasses from some people. uh, it's interesting talking to people and get their perspectives. Besides that, let's go to the number of electors. So I'm gonna try to read as much as I can to this wiki because I feel like just today is my chance just to go over this entire this, and I'll probably go this next time. Um, some other time. But anywho, I digress. Number of electors. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution. Okay, everything is good. With volume. Because, yeah, I might as well just go side. OBS tends to also pick up other things like, I forgot what is the measure, but I also try to measure the amount of interference that's going in. This goes with all my setup and stuff because tech can be that confusing, especially with how I set up my tech. So let me reread this. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution empowers each state legislature to determine the manner by which the state's electors are chosen. The number of electors in each state is equal to the sum of the state's membership in the Senate and House of Representatives. Currently, there are 100 senators and 435 state representatives. In addition, the 23rd Amendment, ratified in 1961, provides that the district establish pursuant of 2, Article 1, Section 8, the seat of the federal government, namely District of Columbia, is entitled to the number it would have if there was a state, but in no case more than that of the least populous state. In practice, the results in Washington, D.C. being entitled to 3 electors. U.S. territories are not entitled to any electors. 6-7, there are currently 538 electors. So yeah, you could just remember that. It corresponds to the amount of people here. And since this is all together, we could just quickly browse through here. So this is the wiki that's under it. So we have to go to 2, as it says here, method of choosing electors. And then you have 3 electors. So it has its own wiki. Article 2 of the United States Constitution. Not Article 1, not Article 3, but 2. Dos. Procedure. Following the national presidential election day on the first Tuesday after November 1st, each state counts its popular votes according to its laws to select the electors. In 48 states and Washington, D.C., the winner of the plurality of the statewide vote receives all of the state's electors. In Maine and Nebraska, 2 electors assigned in this manner, and the remaining electors allocated based on the plurality of votes in each congressional district. States generally required electors to pledge to vote for the state's winner to avoid faithless electors. Most states have adopted various laws to enforce the elector's pledge. The electors of each state meet in their respective state capital on the first Monday after the second Wednesday of December to cast their votes. The results are counted by Congress, where they are tabulated in the first week of January before a joint meeting of the Senate and House of Representatives, presided over by the Vice President and as President of the Senate. Should a majority of votes not to cast for a candidate, the House turns itself into a presidential election session where 1 vote is assigned to each of the 50 states. Similarly, the state is responsible for electing the vice president, with each senator having 1 vote. The elected president and the vice president are inaugurated in January 20th. Let's go with background. The Constitutional Convention in 1787 used the Virginia Plan as the basis for discussions. As the Virginia proposal was the first, the Virginia Plan called for Congress to elect the president. Delegates from the majority of states agreed to this mode of election. After being debated, however, delegates came to oppose nomination by the Congress for the reason that it could violate the separation of powers. James Williamson then made a motion for electors for the purpose of choosing the president. Later, the convention, a committee formed to work at various details, including the mode of election of the president, including final recommendations for the electors. A group of people appointed among the states in the same numbers as their representatives in Congress, the formula for which have been resolved in lengthy debates resulting in the Connecticut Compromise and Three-Fifths Compromise. Let's just skip through here. Yeah, there's no images or graphs that explains it, but these are all things that occur. And for the sake of it, we could also look over James Williamson for an actual picture. So yeah, as you see, it was one of the founding fathers of the United States and signatory of the United States Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So, we're here, but chosen by each state in such manner as the legislature may direct. Committee member Gouverneur Morris. Ooh, Gouverneur Morris, American statesman. Yeah, yeah, that's actually his name. So it's not Gouverneur. Governor. I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but oh well. Ugh. Oh shoot. Ugh. Choked a bit on my water. Ugh. Let me actually shake up my water just to make sure that nobody spills. Yeah. It wasn't properly sealed. Darn it. Governor Morris explained the reasons for the change. Among others, there were fears of intrigue if the president was chosen by a small group of men who met together regularly, as well as concerns for the independence of the president if they were elected by Congress. However, once the Electoral College has been decided on, several delegates, Mason, Butler, Morris, Wilson, and Madison, openly recognized its ability to protect the election process from cabal, corruption, intrigue, and faction. So yeah, there's actually the reasons it's stated on why. Some delegates, including James Wilson and James Madison, prefer popular election of the executive. Madison acknowledged that while a popular vote would be ideal, it will be difficult to get consensus on the proposal given the prevalence of slavery in the South. So this is actually stated from Madison. So James Madison. Uh, so yeah, too bad we don't have a hyperlink, so we could actually read more on the basis of him. But yeah, he does come up more into U.S. politics later on. But this is from what he believed in on the popular vote. Because of the prevalence of slavery, which corresponds with the Three-Fifths Compromise. And let's briefly see the Connecticut Compromise. Was agreement that large and small states reaching during the yeah, that's part defined by the legislative structure and representative that each state will be under the United States Constitution. So I don't know much, not sure much about the Connecticut, but Three-Fifths Compromise, that is related to slavery and how they work in politics. So that is a concern that North and South did look at. Oh yeah, this is one reason why they picked it, decided on it. There was one difficulty, however, of a serious in nature attending an immediate choice by the people. This is James Madison quote. The rights of suffrage was much more divisive in the northern than the southern states, and the latter could have no influence in the election of the score of Negroes. The substitution of electors of validated this difficulty and seemed on the whole to be liable to the fewest objections. So this is what James Madison stated on it. So yeah, consensus on the proposal. So yeah, he has any means to talk about his opinion on that matter. The convention approved the committee's Electoral College proposal with minor modifications on September 6, 1787. Delegates from states with smaller populations or limited land area, such as Connecticut, New Jersey, and Maryland, generally favored the Electoral College with some consideration for states at the compromise providing for a runoff among the top 5 candidates. The small states supposed that the House of Representatives, with each state delegation casting one vote, would decide most elections. In the Federalist Papers, James Madison explained his views on the selection of the president and the Constitution. In Federalist number 39, Madison argued that the Constitution was designed to this mixture of state-based and population-based government. Congress would have 2 houses, the state-based Senate and the population-based House of Representatives. Meanwhile, the president would be elected by a mixture of the 2 modes. So, yeah, there's a lot more. But here's a hyperlink with James Madison. So, was an American statesman, diplomat, expansion philosopher, and founding father who served as the 4th president of the United States from 1809 to 1817. So this will be the president around the War of 1812. So the second declared war in the United States. And right, so because yeah, what is it? Yeah, being the first president of being the first president in the United States was George Washington. Second is John Adams. Third is Thomas Jefferson, and then it's James Madison. So yeah, that does correspond with several of the founding fathers who were president, and several of them were still alive, except George Washington. He died in, I believe, in 1799. But yeah, there's this whole the reason why I bring it up because there's this whole thing where once the turn of the century, the 1800s for America in the beginning, it went on all to the political parties because you start having many factions coming out for their ideologies and forming their own structures, parties under republicanism, democracy, and still federalism. Yeah, there's Wiki and stuff like that, but that's going more into later decades. But yeah, George Washington was a Federalist, and he really coined this term along with several founding fathers. So explaining the Federalist Papers from Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. I didn't know John Jay also up along with this. But yeah, it shows the importance of a government and what they look at. So let's go with here. In Federalist number 39, Madison argued that the Constitution was designed with a mixture of state-based and population-based government. So this is referring to voters and how they view it. This to be basis to looking at everything with a popular vote and then a state-based or electoral. But I digress. Alexander Hamilton in Federalist number 68 laid out what he believed were the key advantages to Electoral College. The electors come directly from the people and them alone, for the purpose only and for the time only. This avoided a party-run legislature or a permanent body that could be influenced by foreign interests, Before each election, Hamilton explains that the election was to take place among all the states, so no corruption in any state could tout the great body of the people in their selection. The choice was to be made by the majority of the Electoral College, as a majority rule is critical for the principles of Republican government. So, see, it is Republican government. Hamilton argued that the electors meeting in the state's capitals were able to have information unavailable to the general public. Hamilton also argued that no federal office holder could be an elector. Electors would be beholden to any presidential candidate. Another consideration was the decision would be made without tumult and disorder. So I do wonder how they refer it to, because this is under quote, so I can imagine that this is actually what they mentioned, but I gotta understand what they refer to was what is considered a disorder. If an I'm an 1800s guy, and I usually use that word to refer to something. So yeah, but that's like beyond my understanding. It will take time. Oh yeah, let's move over. As it would be a broad-based one made on simultaneously simultaneously in various locales where the decision makers could deliberate reasonable, not in one place where decision makers could be threatened or intimidated. If the Electoral College did not achieve a decisive majority, then the House of Representatives was to choose the president from among the top 5 candidates, ensuring selection of a presiding officer, administering, administering. Yeah. Oh, uh, let me drink some water and flush. Got something down my mouth. I think I also need to eat something because, ah, what is it? Hiking up, um, around outside, having a bit of mouth orphan because you're like exhausted from exercising. You tend to catch some nasty things while trying to breathe hard, and it's a frustration. But let me read where we left off. Do do. Oh, 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 oh. Do, do, do. Okay, now I'm confused because I'm thinking of several other things like, oh shoot, all these info. But let's just start getting so I could at least try to understand a bit more. Another consideration was the decision would be made without tumult and disorder, as it would be a broad based one simultaneous in various locales where the decision makers could deliberate reasonably, not in one place where decision makers could be threatened or intimidated. If the Electoral College did not achieve a decisive majority, and the House of Representatives was to choose the president from among the top 5 candidates, ensuring selection of the presiding officer, administration, the laws that will have both ability and good character. Hamilton was also concerned about somebody unqualified but with a talent for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity attaining high office. So this is also ensuring not someone winning just for the sake of them being popular or they done something to win that popularity, but someone who could actually achieve the merits of other politicians. And yeah, this is one Hamilton um, viewed it. Additionally, in the Federalist number 10, James Madison argued against an interest and overbearing majority and the mischiefs of faction in an electoral system. He defined a fraction as a number of citizens where amounting to a majority or minority of the whole who are united and acuted by some common impulsive passion or of interest, assertive to the rights of other citizens, or their permanent and aggregate interests on the community, a republican government, i.e., representative democracy as opposed to direct democracy, combined with the principles of federalism, with distribution of voter rights and separation of government powers, would countervail against factions. Madison further populated in the Federalist number 10 that the greater the population expanse of the republic, the more difficulty factions would face in organizing due to such issues as sectionalism. Let's go through here. Sectionalism is loyal to one's own region or a selection of the country rather than the country as a whole. So, yeah, this is actually what explained to that situation, since everybody would view themselves as North and South because of multiple reasons like immigration, customs, or in this case, they both of them have big demographics. Where in the South, it's mainly a lot of um, chattel slaves, and North being a lot of European immigrants around that time. So let's go through here. Although the United States Constitution refers to electors and electors, quote, electors, end quote, and quote, electors, end quote. So big and low, upper, lower. So big electors and small electors. Neither with the phrase Electoral College nor any other name is used to describe electors collectively. It was not until the early 19th century that the name Electoral College came into general usage as collective designation for electors selected to cast votes for presidential and vice president. Oh no, president and vice president. The phrase was first written in federal law in 1845, and today the term appears in 3 U.S.C. and 4 in the selection heading and the text as Electoral College of Electors. Okay, let me look at the time and stuff like that. So okay, everything is good. Let's just go through here because I have a feeling that okay, where I am. So yeah, we were just yeah, we were still in background, and now we're going to history. And history of all this, and it's like 30 minutes. So this is gonna be a tricky one. Okay, tricky one because I haven't done this, so I'm gonna try to find a way to find tricks. I'm not gonna do tricking like last time, where I learned about tricking by just reading, but I'm gonna find ways to actually just go over this. So for number 4, 5, 7, any of them that have so many bullets, I'm gonna skim a little bit of it on read over some important key points that hands out like key terms that I've seen before or other hyperlinks, and we'll see how that goes. History. Initially, state legislatures chose the electors in many of the states. From the early 19th century, states progressively changed to selection by popular election. In 1824, there were 6 states in which electors were still legislatively appointed. By 1832, only in South Carolina had not traditional. Okay, oh, you want again? By 1832, only South Carolina had not transitioned. Shouldn't be haven't transition. But, oh well. I still trouble with English grammar. Since 1880, electors in every state has been chosen based on popular election held on election day. The popular election for electors means the president and vice president are in effect chosen through indirect election by the citizens. Since the mid 19th century, when all electors have been popularly chosen, the Electoral College has elected candidates who received the most popular votes nationwide, except in four elections: 1876, 1888, 2000, and 2016. In 1824, when there were 6 states in which electors were legislatively appointed rather than popular elected, the true national popular vote is uncertain. Electors failed to select a winning candidate, so the matter was decided by the House of Representatives. So let's go through here. The Electoral College has been elected candidate who received the most votes nationwide, except these dates. And we can all remember that recently these things occurred. Last time it happened was around the late 1800s, and that was an era marked with huge changes because you had the Gilded Age, or in the international world, the Victorian era. Um, and it should have a brief of explaining what it is. Was the 23rd quadrennial presidential election held on Tuesday? Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't talk much about this. But you also have the other one. Yeah, it doesn't good brain. But from what I remember, there one big reason had to do with the state of the United States, and one big thing had to do with the era of Reconstruction. Um, in the after the Civil War, because it took time until the era of Reconstruction, well, of rule in southern states to the Union, specifically the federal government, actually was um, came to be, because they were established, and part of it was actually a military rule where one guy actually was in charge with reconstruction. I'm quoting quotes on the South, because in his direct rule, people had questions like it seemed like it was just a military dictatorship under the Union command. A lot of people actually pointed it out, especially many Democrats around the region. But it was a studious, no, not studious, but it was a unsettling time. But yeah, these things occurred within the same amount of years as this one, so brings you to perspective. Original plan. So this is one of the bullets. Let me go through eventually. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3. So this goes back to electors under here, and it talks about their roles and stuff like that. Okay. So you have the under original plan, but let's go with the original plan down here. The original plan of Electoral College is based upon several assumptions and interpretations of the framers of the Constitution. That's one thing. Okay, there's that one. And let's go down here. When we have more time, I can actually scroll up here, but let's say save it for later. Okay. Breakdown and revision. Emergence of political parties, national coordinated election campaigns, soon complicated matters in the elections of 1796 and 1800. Yeah, Federalist Party candidate John Adams won. Then you have the Democratic Republican Party, Thomas Jefferson, the Federalist opponent, who became the vice president. This resulted to the president and vice president being of different political parties. So, yeah. A few decades after the Revolutionary War, this was still part of politics about different parties and different leanings. So, let's go down here. Started with the 1804 election. The amendment requires the elector cast separate ballots for president and vice president, replacing the system outlined in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3. So, yeah, a different revision in government in the United States. So as a constitutional republic, we certainly have some history of actually changing the constitution. Uh, Evolution to the general ticket, going back to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. Let me go briefly. Each state shall appoint in such a manner as the legislature therefore may direct a number of electors. The United States shall be appointed the elector. So I'm just skimming through it so I get a sense of how they spoke. Alexander Hamilton described the founding fathers' view of how electors would be chosen. A small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general mass. And their transit existence and their detachment, unbiased situation already taken notice of for the satisfaction prospect of their continuing so to the conclusion of it. We go down here. Oh, here. When James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, two of the most important archetypes of the Electoral College, saw this tragedy being taken by some states, they protested strongly. Madison and Hamilton both made it clear the approach violated the spirit of the Constitution. So, the people who actually helped create it also strongly saw many flaws and outright spoken against this. So this will be under the general ticket. Founding fathers intended that each elector will be elected by the citizens of a district, and that electors was to be free to analyze and deliberate regarding who is best suited to the president. So the end. Madison and Hamilton was so upset that they saw as a distortion of the original intent that they advocated a constitutional amendment to prevent anything other than the district plan. So yeah, they were even opposed about that they actually wanted to overturn it. Evolution, the general ticket under the Electoral College. Evolution of selection plans. In 1789, at the at-large popular vote, the winner-take-all method began with Pennsylvania, Maryland, Massachusetts, Virginia, and Delaware. Since 1836, statewide winner-take-all popular voting for electors have been the utmost universal practice. So, with the two at-large electors assigned to support the winner of the statewide popular vote. Get the free fiscals. Oh my god. I just looked at the time, looked at my scroll wheel. Oh my god, there's so much I don't have. Alrighty. Shoot. Okay, let's just read the headlines. Evolution of selection plans. And you have the dates that correspond. 3/5 clause in the role of slavery. We discussed about it. So you have several of the Clee people, and in 1824, Andrew Jackson, a slaveholder from Tennessee, was similarly defeated by John Quincy Adams, a strong critic of slavery. So, he was up. He wanted to be president. John Quincy Adams did, so he became president later on. And the 14th Amendment, Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, requires the state representative of the House of Representatives to reduce, if the state denies the right to vote to any male, more here. Meeting of electors, going to Clause 4 of Article 2, Section 1. Then the modern mechanics, a summary. Where should we go? We should just read the beginning here. The 2012 certificate of vote issued by Maryland delegation to Electoral College. Okay, paper. Even though the aggregate national popular vote is calculated by the state officials, media organization, and the Federal Election Commission, the people only indirectly elect the president. So this is a good summary. 15, just need a quick read. Electors, opponent, population per elector vote for each state and Washington, D.C. It counts all those states and stuff. Then you have the nominations, custom of allowing recognized political parties to select a state of prospective electors develop early. Then you have selection process. Going back to Clause 2. Clause 2 is important under this Wikipedia. So, Then we go to the meetings. College Electoral College never meets as one body. Electors meet in their respective state capitals. Electors for the District of Columbia meet with the district. So I take it that will be the case for other territories when they actually would get more political rights in government, along with the being part of the federal affairs for the U.S. Then you have the faithlessness. Talks a bit about it. No, there's nothing I could just read here. While faithless electors have never changed the outcome of any presidential election, there are two occasions where the presidential election have been influenced by faithless electors. Talks about the one in 1796, 1836. Alrighty, so a 4-decade gap. Joint session of Congress. The 12th Amendment mandates Congress assemble in joint session to accord Electoral College and declare the winners of election. Contingencies. Contingent presidential election by the House. The 12th Amendment requires the House of Representatives to go into session immediately to vote for president if no candidate for president receives a majority of electoral votes. So yeah, we'll see how that goes because that's part of the 12th Amendment. So there is a plan. And there is a contingent vice presidential election by Senate. If no candidate for vice president receives an absolute majority of electoral votes, when the president must go into session to elect a vice president. Yada yada yada. Deadlock election. Section 3 of the 12th Amendment specifies the House of Representatives as not chosen a president elected in the time of inaugurations. It talks about the timing and stuff like that. Then you have the current electoral vote distribution, all these numbers, green, red, and maps. Then there's the chronological table. So I'm not gonna read this. You can just go to the Wikipedia and look up. Now, matter of fact, let me just freaking share this link to the chat. Then you have the map, a colorful map. Yeah, put a comment to see how other people can try to understand all this. So yeah, the cartogram shows the number of electors from each state from the 2012, 2016, 2020 presidential election. Then you have another graph. Alternative methods of choosing electors. Those we'll talk different ones, but as you've shown here, this is another way to organize it from legislature selection, popular vote, at large, districting. But yeah, that's one method that has its own things. Appointment by state legislation. Alrighty. So, Andrew Jackson. Oh boy, he's related to this. Yeah, hooray. Then electoral districts. Another method used early in U.S. history was to divide the state into electoral districts. So, yeah. Districting and separating borders and lines in the state is an old thing the U.S. did. Now, proportional vote. In a proportional system, electors will be selected in proportion to the votes cast for their candidate or party, rather than being selected by a statewide plurality vote. This one method, the Congressional District method. So all this is under alternative methods of choosing electors. So we go through here. Congressional District method. Two versions of the Congressional District method. One had been implemented in Maine and Nebraska, another proposed in Virginia. Under the implemented means, one electoral vote goes per the plurality of the popular votes of each congressional district, and two per the statewide popular vote. implementation of the 43 multi-district states, those of whose 514 electoral votes are amenable to the method Maine 4 EV and Nebraska 5 EV use it. So yeah, go see Nebraska doing their own thing. And the recent abandoned adoption of the state in 2010, Republicans in Pennsylvania, who control both houses of the legislature and as well as the governorship, put forward a plan to change the state's winner takes all system to a congressional district method system. So yeah, that's one thing. Now we're under contemporary issues. Arguments between opponents and opponents of the current electoral system include four separate but related topics: indirect election, disproportionate voting powers by some states, the winner takes all distribution method and chosen by 48 of the 50 states and Federalist, and arguments against Electoral College and common discussion focus mostly on the allocation of the voting power among the states. Gary Buer research of congressional debates over proposed congressional amendments to abolish the Electoral College reveals reform opponents have been appealed to a traditional Republican version of representation, whereas reform advocates had tended to reference a more democratic view. I'm still pretty confused, but oh well. There's criticism. Non-determinacy of popular vote. Elections of yeah. Winner who did not receive at least a plurality of the nationwide popular vote. And let's just go through here. Talks about the graphs. The graphs demonstrate the winner of the popular vote can still lose in a hypothetical electoral college system. We've seen that this beginning of the century in the U.S., and it just shows that everybody understands that. Bar graph the popular votes in presidential elections through 2016. Black stars marks the 5 cases where the winner did not have plurality of the popular vote. So polarity. Its importance in popular vote. Comparison of 4 elections in which the Electoral College winner lost the popular vote. Exclusive focus on large swing states. So we have it here. This map shows the amount of attention given to each state by the Bush and Kerry campaigns during the first 5 weeks of the 2004 election. Critics argue that Electoral College is democratic, the national direct popular vote, and is subject to manipulation because of the faithless electors, as stated here, not quoted. So, discouragement of turnout and participation. Except in closely fought swing states, voter turnout does not affect the election results due to entrenched political party domination in most states, and obscuring the infringement between states. Yeah, the electoral college reduces elections to a mere count of electors for a particular state, and yeah, we gotta move on. Like an infringement of U.S. territories. U.S. territories are not entitled to electors in presidential elections. Yeah, that's a shame. Advantages based on state population. Research has variously attempted to measure which state voters have the greatest impact on in such an indirect election. Then the disadvantage for third parties. In practice, the winner take all manner of allocating a state's electors generally decreases the importance of minor parties' support. Maintenance of national and federal character in the United States of America is a federal republic that consists of component states. So as here, half the U.S. population is in 143 urban suburban counties out of 3,143 counties or county equivalents. 2019 American Community Survey. As seen here, then the criticality of the preference of minority groups in closed states. Instead of decreasing the power of minority groups by depressing voter turnout, proponents argue that by making the votes of given states on all or nothing affair, minority groups provide the critical edge that allows candidates to win in close battle states. So this goes with the demographics of your voters. Encouragement of stability through the two-party system. Proponents of the Electoral College sees its negative effect on third parties as beneficial. Let me scroll down here because I take it that the references. Okay, yeah, we're actually getting close now. Flexibility if a presidential candidate dies. According to the argument in the fact that electoral college is made up of real people instead of mere numbers, allowing for human judgment and flexibility to make a decision. If it happens that a candidate dies or becomes legally disabled around the time of election, there's things that occurred like in 1872 and 1912. Isolation of election problems. Some supporters of electoral college note that it isolates the impact of any election fraud or such problems to the state where it occurs and prevents instances where a party dominated in one state may additionally inflate the votes for a candidate and therefore affect the election of outcome. This is isolation of election problems, state by state. All right, have 5 minutes. Public opinion. So as I hear, most polls since 1967 has shown the majority of Americans favor the president and vice president being elected by the nationwide popular vote instead by electoral college since 1967. So this was during the around the height of the Vietnam War, and you had more people going into looking at politics and government, which also led to 18-year-olds finally voting. So important stuff. Efforts to abolish or reform. Bias-Seller Amendment. You also have the Carter proposal along with the current proposals to abolish the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Let me read these two since they're very small. Since January 3rd, 2019, joint resolution has been made proposing constitutional amendments by would replace the Electoral College with a popular election of the president and vice president. So this would be current, so not oldie. Along with says, unlike the Bias-Seller Amendment with its 40% threshold for election, these proposals do not require a candidate to achieve a certain percentage of votes to be elected. So it's a protect. Well, this old one is percentage based. Then you have the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. As of July 2020, 15 states plus the District of Columbia has joined the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Those joining the compact will enact together if and when reflecting majority of electors at least 270 pledge their electors to the winner of the National Popular Vote. Compact applies Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which gives each legislature the preliminary power to determine how they choose electors. Okay, let's skim through this. See about ways. The closest the United States have come to abolish the Electoral College occurred during the 91st, that's weird to say, Congress, 1969 to 1971. The presidential election of 1968 resulted in Richard Nixon receiving 101 electoral votes, compared to Herbert Hoover, 191, and George Wallace, 46, and 13.5 to the popular vote. However, Nixon had received only 511,944 more popular votes than Hoover, 43.5% to 42.9%, less than 1% of the national total. Talks about the representative introducing all this stuff like that. I heard a little bit about this from I believe it's like John Oliver reflecting on Electoral College. Well, yeah. Then you have all these things that occurred around 69 through 71 in the parts of it. Then let's go with Carter proposal. On March 22, 1977, President Jimmy Carter wrote a letter to reform to Congress that it also included his expression of essentially abolishing Electoral College. The letter reads in part, my fourth recommendation is that the Congress adopt a constitutional amendment to provide for a direct popular election of the president. Stated with average English, no legalese to create some confusion. Any person can read it and state his viewpoints. President Carter's proposed program to reform Electoral College was very liberal for the modern president during this time, and some aspects of the package Newspaper reaction cards purport range from some editorials praising the proposals to editorials like the Chicago Tribune criticizing the president proposing the end of the Electoral College. In a letter to New York Times, Representative Jonathan B. Bingham, the New York highlighted the danger of the flawed system. But yeah, as stated, go back here. Under National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, electors of the 16 adherents of the compact number 196, which is 73% of the 270 required to take effect to be considered judiciable. You have to see also ones under all these. You have the references. And as promised a long time ago, let's just scroll by here, the popular vote, so people just see what it just leads to. Just pretty much this. But as I say, popular vote will be a majority vote from people to elect. You see this much in direct democracies, direct democratic governments and nations, and let's say also homes too. But yeah, that's the complicated thing about that. And me reading an old boring Wiki summary, which is not that boring compared to actually reading the legal document, because all the legalese is just boring unless you love that crap, which people love certain things. Your trash is my treasure, and I do like to a certain extent, but I actually learned a bit more of this than just an oversimplified version you see in videos, TV shows, movies, and stuff like that. And also understanding other people's viewpoints, even though how bland it is. Because, some of the quotes are not that interesting to read, but it does show their opinions and how they phrase things. Alrighty, I'm going to go a bit overboard just for another 30 seconds. But yeah. Oh, I actually did learn a bit. And throughout this week, it's going to be haunting me. Me just looking up the news and just seeing how everything's going. Not for me and how I handle it, but the people I hang out with, like in our house, and family and other loved ones. Oh boy, it's gonna be a dowdy. And it'll bring interesting instructions. Alrighty. Well, everybody, have a good night. And I'll certainly have a good night after reading all this. After the headaches stop.